that correct? When it gets done, it'll be better than it is now?
That's the whole intent, is to make sure that hillside does not slide. And obviously, we didn't do a good enough job in reaching out to the homeowners there about attempts were inadequate, but we'll do our best to rectify that if we can, because the idea is to take away that threat of that hillside getting full of water and then sliding down, which would have impacted the homes, but we hope through this design, this engineering, to be able to make sure that never happens.
So now I heard the gentleman talk about you're going to be drilling instead of piers. What is it? You drill and fill?
Yes, and so there'll be 5-foot diameter holes that will be drilled down
60 feet?
about approximately 60 feet, and then they put a steel column and a rebar cage in there and fill it with concrete.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the process. In fact, a friend of mine, we did 12 of those, bored 12 of those holes, and so to stabilize the house. So yeah, it's kind of new, or at least it was new to me, and it worked very well for this particular application. So it sounds like it's headed for the right direction. Thank you.
You want to add on to that?
Yeah, Councilmember Long brought up the issue of starting time, 6:45 in the morning, and I would agree with Councilmember Long that that's totally unrealistic. You know, to a neighborhood community, it's creating a disturbance. I mean, we have our own ordinances, city ordinances, and I realize that the school district is an entity unto itself, but you know, the compatibility issue with what you know, we push as the limits of you know, disturbing a person's peace and quiet. You know, it's really kind of a real concern here. So I personally, you know, it annoys me to think that somebody's going to start at 6:45, and then again, as Councilmember Long discussed, was not really notice that these things were going to occur. They were going to occur not for 90 periods, it's a long period of time. So it's not some short duration. And we're talking about, you know, 2 days, 3 days. We're talking, what's the schedule for it? How many days to get this accomplished?
The piers are scheduled to be done in 60 days, the contract represents it,
that's 2 months.
less. Now, is it?
2 months allowing for continuous operation without any delays by rain or whatever.
Well, I was going to say the contractor expects to get done more on the order of 40 days. So,
40 days.
Right. As to your concern about when the noise is occurring, the district does require by contract that the contractors work within the city requirements. So your ordinances are reflected in the district's contract documents.
But we also know that is not necessarily, they're not necessarily held to those standards, because we had those issues out at Ellerhurst Elementary School, where the contractors were working.
I recall that issue, and we did go back and address that, so that was stopped. Okay. And if that's the case on this project, we'll do the same thing. So they are to operate within what's allowed by your ordinances.
Okay. So we have your assurance.
You do.
Okay.
Well, Lisa, I'm glad you came. I'm glad we all got to meet you, because we hadn't. So, and I appreciate that you all are being made aware of the communication standpoint. We started this project off on a good foot. You know, Kevin came in. There was a group of people in town that got together and, you know, did the fiddle around with the little blocks and things. This is where he came up with the shape. You know, you're asking about where the cells are going to go. The shape that has, the vertical part that you see on the drawing, that was specifically because that came out of those early meetings. We wanted to make sure it was spaced the right way in order for that to work. That figured in the parking and you know, all those kind of things. And so there was a lot of really good communication at the beginning, and then as things started picking up, you know, every now and then there'd be a little bit of a check-in. You know, Kevin would come out, or somebody would come and from the district and explain what was going on. And then sort of like the Iron Curtain fell, and we didn't hear anything for a long time. And so Pinole has a history of, you know, in our mind, of not being the greatest treated by the district, depending on who you talk to. And so it's sort of like a little raw nerve with us. And so whenever there seems to be a lack of communication, because there really was, and my understanding from talking to staff is some of it from previous people working on, in charge, they were a little flippant. And it was hard to get them to tell them anything really. So that just adds to the, adds onto the pile. So that being said, that you're willing to come and do that, I think that's really good. I was going to suggest that since we're getting into the real construction, and especially the demolition, which is going to be, there's going to be things going on flying through the air like dust and things that we don't like. I haven't even mentioned to my wife yet that it's going to get a little dusty around our house from the demolition, because I'll be, of course, the first one to hear about that. But it's time to have maybe a few more meetings and a little bit more of a check-in, just to kind of say, here's what's happening. Like, for example, the thing that Debbie was talking about, it does affect, in my mind, everybody up there, and the resultant kind of things you see from work like that. We're not talking about piers that you put for your deck. These are gigantic piers. They're going to want to hear about how's that being protected. You're going to drill piers and are they getting covered up at night? Just basic stuff, and basic stuff that we know that you have to do just because that's how it's done. But the average person wouldn't know a lot of that kind of thing. And so I think anything you can do to increase the level of communication on that. And the other thing that's not being said here, that's a good thing, is it's not only just going to stabilize the hill for the school, it's stabilizing the hill for everybody else up there as well. So everybody's going to benefit on that. So I think, that'd be one of the things that you should reinforce, that that's another thing that'll be happening from that. So however you want to do that, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, this is a huge project, but an exciting project, and so we'll put together a communication plan and get the input from folks on the best way to be able to communicate what's happening, and we could even come back here and do periodic presentations for updates here.
And it may be that it may not have to be for everyone, but maybe some the people involved, like people up there now, having a meeting that like this meeting that's coming up. That's a good thing to have. When we had the earlier planning meetings, everyone in the area, pretty much around the school, that and all the streets in the front, all those people got noticed, and they came. A lot of them came, and that was really helpful. I think people got a better idea of what was really going on at the early stages. But again, now it's time to come back and say, okay, well, here's the end point now. Remember the thing we were playing with before. Now here's the real thing, and let them know here's what's really happening now. It's really happening now. So that's going to be pretty important, and I think it'll go a long way with the community in terms of what's going on, and keep the excitement going. I'm really excited to hear you're going to be done in 3 years. The heat's off for my daughter now, so.
Done with the main campus in about 3 years. But I think that's an excellent point, Tim, and a great segue just to let you know that on December 8th, a week from last night, right, next Monday, we're doing a presentation to the PTSA at the high school. So that was the first step in beginning that